Will the House come to order? Mr. Clerk?
Aloha and good afternoon. Today's invocation will be delivered by Representative Therese Amato. Will the members who wish to participate please rise?
Please sit. Okay. Greetings, friends and colleagues, both here and afar. Today is Leap Day. Leap Day is much more than a periodic correction in the Julian calendar. It is in many ways analogous to what we do here at the Capitol. There are many definitions and types of year: a calendar year, a lunar year, a common year, a sidereal year, and a tropical year. All are different perspectives, like the many views here in the House. Some views are close enough to work together. We can agree to disagree on what a year is, yet we come to an agreement on how to correct our calendar, and here in the House on compromises on how to best help our collective communities. Why do we have leap year? Earth circles around our sun approximately every 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds. This is called a tropical year. However, the flawed Gregorian calendar has only 365 days, but it tries to get it right. But that is just approximate. A year constantly varies, like our perspective on issues, and depends on things like the axis of the Earth wobbling, the shape of the Earth, the positions of other planets which perturb our orbit, which also happens with members of the House. It's not that we cannot calculate a year. Joe tells me that there is no closed mathematical astrodynamical solution to compute a year exactly, as it is constantly varying, much like the challenges we face here, providing homes for people and pets, medical care, education, and food, or trying to balance the budget. Oddly, some problems in our universe actually have no exact solutions, like many we see in the House. And some things are dark mysteries, much like our budget. And we appreciate those who commit themselves to such studies to help all of us help others. Using computers, we can approximate a year to any degree of accuracy we choose, depending on how hard we want to work on solutions. But I like to be practical, so I say a year is 365.242 days, and that's close enough for me. We could debate this and the nature of what is fundamentally knowable in our universe, but instead, let us agree to disagree, but be close enough in our views to move forward together to help our neighbors. Of course, the most important fact to me personally about this Dragon Leap Day, aside from the privilege of serving along with all of you to help my community, is that today is my birthday, which comes only every 1,461 days. Well, approximately. To my mom, who is watching on YouTube today, this fire dragon daughter of yours says thank you for everything over the last 12 years, and I send my love and humble gratitude for your pain and patience while I waited for the most perfect, most unique time to be born. And the House's patience while I grow into this job is also appreciated. Much like the Vivaldi string quartet we saw last night, in the House of Representatives, we all have different rhythms and tones. May we find unison and move forward together to create something beautiful and harmonious. May this leaping year of the dragon propel us forward into an era of prosperity and recovery for our state. Mahalo.
Thank you, Representative Amato. Let's move on to item 1, roll call. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Ayu? Mr. Alcos? Ms. Amato? Ms. Bellotti? Mr. Chun? Ms. Cochran?
Excuse.
Mr. Evslin? Mr. Ganadin? Mr. Garcia? Mr. Garrett? Mr. Gates? Mr. Hashem? Mr. Holt?
Excuse.
Ms. Hussey Burdick? Ms. Ichiyama? Ms. Kahaloa? Ms. Capella? Mr. Keela? Ms. Kitagawa, Mr. Kobayashi, Mr. Kong, Ms. Lachika, Ms. Lamosao, Ms. Lowen, Ms. Martin, Ms. Martinez, Mr. Matayoshi, Ms. Matsumoto, Mr. Miyake, Ms. Mizuno, Ms. Morikawa, Ms. Nakamura, Mr. Nakashima, Mr. Nishimoto, Mr. Onishi, Ms. Peruso, Mr. Pirik, Ms. Poepoe, Mr. Quinlan, Mr. Saiki, Mr. Sayama, Ms. Souza, Mr. Takayama, Ms. Takenouchi, Mr. Tam, Mr. Tarnas, Mr. Todd, Mr. Ward, Mr. Woodson, Mr. Yamashita, Mr. Speaker.
Present.
Mr. Speaker, 49 members are present, 2 are excused.
Thank you. Item 2, reading of the journal. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I move we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 14th through 17th days and approve the same as though read throughout.
Representative Garcia.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that the journal days 14 through 17 be approved. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. Item 3, Mr. Clerk, are there any messages from the governor?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are in receipt of Governor's message number 3 requesting the expeditious consideration of Senate Bill number 582, Senate Draft 1, relating to the state budget. May this matter be received and filed.
So ordered. Item 4, Mr. Clerk, are there any Senate communications?
Mr. Speaker, there are none.
Members, are there any introductions? Representative Hussey Burdick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, we're honored to have with us in the gallery some students from the Leader in Me pathway at Monoweli Elementary. Please rise when I say your name and hold applause to the end. We have students Parker, Andrick, Hudson, Aria, Katie, Kupa'a, Alina, Tasha, Lyric, Elise, Kayana, Mikiala, Oriella, Kenzie, Alexa, and their academic coaches Dee Takano and Mark Wong. Welcome to your House of Representatives.
Members, are there any further introductions? With no further introductions, let's move on to the order of the day. Item 5, members, please note that the House Bill 1944 HD2 has been referred to the Committees on Labor and Government Operations and Consumer Protection and Commerce per committee referral sheet number 15. The Committee on Finance waived its referral to this measure, and therefore it is appropriate for the House to consider action for passage on third reading. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules of the House to reconsider action previously taken on House Bill number 1944 HD2.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to reconsider action taken pursuant to the recommendation contained in the Standing Committee Report number 542-24, recommending referral to the Committee on Finance.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any discussion on the motion to reconsider? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules of the House in order to consider certain House bills for third reading by consent calendar.
Representative Garcia.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move that House Bill number 1944 HD2, as listed on page 1, pass third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any discussion on HB 1944? Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, on the measure before us, all majority members vote aye.
Representative Garcia.
On the measure before us, all minority members vote aye.
Have all votes been cast? Said House bills passed for third reading. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt Standing Committee Reports numbers 630-24 and 631-24 as listed on page 2, and that the accompanying House bills as amended pass third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any discussion on SCR 630-24? 631? All right, members.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Susan.
with reservations for 631-24. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, members. Representative Morikawa for the vote.
Mr. Speaker, on the measures before us, all majority members vote aye.
Representative Garcia.
On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye.
Have all votes been cast? Said House bills pass third reading. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt Standing Committee Report numbers 632-24 through 639-24 as listed on pages 2 through 17. (632-24) through 689-24, as listed on pages 2 through 17, and that the accompanying House bills as may be amended pass second reading and be placed on the calendar for third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any discussion on SCR 632-24? 633, next page. 634, 635, 636. Representative Pierrick.
No vote.
So ordered. Next page. 637, 638, 639, 640. Next page. 641, 642.
No vote.
Representative Pierrick. 642, no vote. So ordered. 643, 644. Representative Chica.
In opposition, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
Just brief comments. This is a GOVS package bill, and I appreciate the intent of this measure to expand on the membership and standardize, an attempt to standardize education for and training for law enforcement officers across the state. Reading the testimony, it says in here that it does seem to reverse a lot of the progress Hawaii has made in the last few years by exempting nearly all officers from the minimum standards and licensing requirements for the board to anyone hired before July 1, 2026. It would grandfather anyone, and so they would be exempt from minimum standards and licensing requirements. And I believe that all standards should apply across the board, not creating a separate level of officers. Public safety is important, and we want to make sure that our communities are prioritized. So for these reasons, I vote no.
Thank you. All right, members, moving on to the next page. SCR 645-24. Representative Pierrick.
No vote.
So ordered. 646, 647, 648. Next page. 649, 650. Representative Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, with reservations.
So ordered. Moving on to 651, 652. Next page. 653.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Kitagawa.
in opposition,
Proceed.
Ko'olau Pets is in my district, and I'm voting in opposition due to concerns that they have shared in testimony.
Thank you. Representative Kong.
With reservations.
So ordered.
Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Matayoshi.
Reservations.
So ordered. All right, members, we're going to move on to 654, 655. Representative Garcia.
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Kong.
With reservations.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Kitagawa.
in opposition,
Proceed.
this bill is related to expungement, and I have concerns about this bill similar to those shared in testimony by the Attorney General's office. and I'd like to share a few of the concerns that they brought up through their testimony. They have stated that promoting a detrimental drug in the third degree under Section 712-1249 is still an offense within the Penal Code of the HRS. Decisions on expungement and the sealing of those court records should not be made unless or until Section 712-12-49 HRS no longer exists in the Penal Code. Otherwise, a person could theoretically be arrested or convicted pursuant to this section one day and then the record expunged the next day. Their next point that I wanted to share from their testimony states that based on Section 1 of this bill, it appears the proposals are being made in response to the decriminalization of possession of cannabis in the amount of 3 grams or less. Yet the proposed mandate would actually involve expungement of all offenses charged under Section 712-12-49 HRS. Section 712-1249 HRS currently covers possession of less than 1 ounce of cannabis. So I think this expungement would go against the law that we had passed a few years ago, which would expunge the 3 grams of cannabis possession, and this one, based on what the Attorney General has stated, could go up to the 1 ounce of cannabis. Also like to note that the judiciary also asked that this measure be deferred to allow further study of this issue, and that the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation is also in opposition of this bill. And for these reasons, I'm a no on this measure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Tarnas,
In support.
proceed.
Thank you. This measure is specifically aimed at assisting those people who were convicted or arrested or convicted of an offense of possession of 3 grams or less of marijuana. The legislature in 2019 had decriminalized the possession of 3 grams or less of cannabis. Despite their criminalization, some persons still have prior arrest records or conviction records for these charges. And looking at how other states are managing this, the processes generally require an eligible person to navigate the court system and pay court fees. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, at least 20 states have developed state-initiated processes to expunge certain criminal records at no cost to the record holder to ease the logistical and financial barriers to receiving an expungement. So the purpose of this bill is to create a state-initiated process to expunge these drug-related criminal records at no cost to the record holder. It's true that this is actually related to, this is referred to a specific 712-1249 section in the HRS. While the Committee on Judiciary wanted to narrowly focus just on the 3 grams or less of cannabis, unfortunately, the criminal record database does not distinguish between what specific controlled substance the person was arrested or convicted for in 712-1249. And so this was as precise as we could do under current circumstances with the existing criminal history database that exists. We are working on behalf of your Judiciary Committee to try to improve our database so that we can be more precise. But failing that, this is the most precise that we could focus, the most precise wording that we could produce in our bill to try to bring some fairness and justice to those who were arrested or convicted for an offense that is no longer criminal. So I urge the members to support this as we go forward. Thank you.
Members, Representative Ward.
No vote, please.
So ordered. Representative Matayoshi.
No vote. And can I adopt the words of the other representative from Kaneohe?
So ordered. Representative Matsumoto.
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Lamasao.
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Kila.
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Nishimoto.
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Alcos.
No vote.
So ordered. Members, we're going to move on. Representative Onishi.
No vote. And can I have the words from the Vice Chair for Finance entered into the record as my own?
So ordered. Members, with no remaining comments. We're going to move on to SCR 656. Next page, 657, 658, 659, 660. Next page, 661, Representative Garcia.
In opposition?
Proceed.
Thank you. On page 3, starting in line 4 of House Bill 2342, any person who knowingly possesses or intentionally uses or threatens to use a dirk, dagger, blackjack, metal, knuckles, or other deadly or dangerous weapon, or a billy, and it does define a billy, while engaged in the commission of a separate felony or misdemeanor shall be guilty of a Class C felony. Are we serious? This is crazy. People have a fundamental right to protect themselves, and to carry weapons on them is people's fundamental right. This is ridiculous. No vote.
Representative Kong?
No vote, please.
So ordered. Representative Souza?
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Ward?
No vote, brief comment, Speaker.
Proceed.
This is from the Office of the Public Defender, who I often don't quote, but in his letter, or her letter, it says, this bill means that a person who lawfully acquires a firearm for self-defense purposes and later commits a misdemeanor is guilty of a Class C felony and loses the right to have firearms for the rest of their life. For the rest of their life. This can lead to unintended consequences. Suppose a defendant, this is very serious, while carrying a pistol holstered to their person, punches an intruder in the defendant's home and is charged with assault of the 3rd degree. If the jury rejects their defense and finds the person guilty of the misdemeanor offense, they would also be found guilty of this new felony offense, even if the person carrying the firearm was lawful and unrelated to the misdemeanor. This Section 2 offense would arguably be seriously unconstitutional. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I think we're trying to zero down into a rabbit hole that's going to get us in worse trouble than what we're trying to get out of. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Tarnas?
In support.
Proceed.
Thank you. This bill is an administration bill. It specifically does a number of things, but I want to focus on one particular one. It specifically creates a Class C felony offense for carrying, using, or threatening the use of a firearm in the commission of a separate misdemeanor offense. This new provision would protect the public from the criminal use of firearms while also respecting the right of law-abiding and responsible citizens. In the Bruin case, which people understand, which your members understand was a Supreme Court decision that allows to carry a firearm and as set forth with restrictions that the Supreme Court has said are reasonable in interpreting the Second Amendment. So I think that this bill is narrowly focused. The Attorney General crafted this in order to be consistent with the Bruin decision and protection of the rights under the Second Amendment. So I think this is a reasonable bill to move forward with, and I urge members to support it. Thank you.
Representative Keeler?
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Valcos?
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Perrick?
In opposition?
Proceed.
Traditionally, men are protectors, and so let's say there's a couple, and the
Point of order,
Hold
Mr.
Representative
Speaker.
Gannon?
The previous discussions of like what men's role is in society, I don't think is exactly relevant to the purview of the bill.
Representative Perrick?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. That was not a point of order. It's a point of parliamentary inquiry. And so, yeah, that's not a point of order.
Members, let's stay to the merits of the bill. Representative Perrick?
Thank you. This bill is about firearms, which includes the topic of defense, which includes the topic of protection. Traditionally, in families, men are the protectors of the family, and if the man can't be there, they often want to enable the woman to protect herself. That can include a firearm, a knife. This bill would restrict women from having a switchblade or a butterfly knife in their purse. We want women to be protected, and I think having a knife in their purse can provide that added level of self-defense. I don't think this is a good bill. I'm voting no.
All right, members. Representative Gates?
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Matsumoto?
Same request.
So ordered. All right, members, we're going to move on to SCR 662, 663. Representative Pierre?
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Garcia?
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Kong?
With reservations.
So ordered. Representative Matsumoto?
Reservations.
So ordered. All right, members, we're going to move on to the next item, 664. Next page, 665, 666, 667, 668. Representative Quinlan?
No vote, please.
So ordered. Representative Garcia?
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Pierre?
In opposition?
Proceed.
My understanding is that this bill would basically allow a minor's crime to be expunged from his record after he turns 21. However, this bill also provides if an 18-year-old commits a crime, that crime can be expunged from his record at 21 years old. For that reason, I vote no.
Representative Keela?
Reservation, Speaker.
So ordered. Representative Gates?
Reservation.
So ordered. Representative Ward?
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Valcos?
Reservations.
So ordered. Proceed.
When it's time, can I go back to 663?
Yes, let's finish this up.
Yep.
Thank you. Representative Lamasal?
With reservation.
So ordered. All right, members, let's move back to SCR 663 on page 10. Representative Valcos?
No vote.
So ordered. All right, let's move back to the top of the agenda. Next page to page 12 on 669. 670, 671, 672. Next page, 673, 674, 675. Representative Garcia.
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Pierre.
No vote.
So ordered. Next item, 676. Next page, 677, 678, 679. Representative Capella.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No vote.
So ordered. Representative Peruso.
Same request.
So ordered. Moving on to 680. Representative Garcia.
Reservations.
So ordered. Next page, 681. Representative Kong.
With reservations.
So ordered. 682. Representative Capella.
With reservations.
So ordered. Moving on to 683. 684. Next page, 685. Representative Perrick.
In opposition.
Proceed.
This bill would basically clarify the government's definition of a marriage. I don't believe the government, even necessarily the church, can define marriage, but God defines marriage between one man and one woman.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Your point of order?
The speaker is talking about the substance of same-sex marriage, and this is a procedural bill.
Representative Perrick, please stay on the merits of the bill.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. He was speaking on the content of this bill, which is regarding a constitutional amendment to repeal the legislature's authority to limit marriage to opposite-sex couples. It pertains to the topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Go on, Representative Perrick.
Thank you. That is my speech.
Thank you. Members, Representative Ward.
With reservation.
So ordered. Representative Garcia.
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Matsumoto.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Valcos?
Same thing.
So ordered. Representative
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support and permission to insert written comments.
So ordered. All right, members, we're going to move on to SCR 686. Representative Souza,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong opposition,
proceed.
the Mauna Kea Stewardship Authority should not have the opportunity to bypass the Sunshine Law in order to conduct its duties in a manner that constitutes ho'oponopono, which we have also learned in testimony to the Judiciary Committee that ho'oponopono may mean different things to different people, which would create further confusion as to its applicability in this capacity. The Mauna Kea Stewardship Authority, no matter how challenging they find their tasks during this transitionary period, owes a duty of transparency to the people of Hawaii and cannot operate in a manner that hinders the very core of why the authority was formulated to begin with, to find common ground and create openness in carrying out their duties to best serve the interests of our Mauna. In rectifying past wrongs, whether in regards to lack of communication, a disregard for proper protocol, or an inattentiveness to cultural sensitivity, we are making the same mistake again with this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Perrick?
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Ganadin?
In support, may I adopt the words of the representative from District 43 as my own?
So ordered.
With brief comment.
Proceed.
We heard very compelling testimony as for why, the reasons why we shouldn't disallow the Sunshine Law in this very important conversation about the use of Mauna Kea, especially considering the great amount of public and private resources that are going to be going into this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Peruso?
No, in opposition.
Proceed.
And I'd like to adopt the words of the representative from Makakilo as my own.
So ordered. Representative Capella?
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Poi Poi?
Thank you. No vote and permission to enter comments.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Albaladi?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support with reservations, and may I have the words of the representative from Makakilo adopted as if they're my own and some brief comments.
So ordered.
I am very concerned about this recommendation about exempting from the Sunshine Law. We're seeing this kind of language in other bills, and so that's what I would like to flag. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Gates?
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Ward?
No vote, please.
So ordered. Representative Hasibardik?
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Valcos?
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Garcia?
No vote.
So ordered. Representative Matsumoto?
Same request.
So ordered. All right, members, we're going to move on to SCR 687. Next page.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Perrick?
in opposition for 687,
Proceed.
this bill would basically allow if somebody's supposed to appear before a court, if they don't show up within 48 hours, there wouldn't be any consequences. This seems congruent with a movement that would make it to where we're lax on crime. We need to be tough on crime to decrease crime. So I'm going to be voting no.
Moving on to the next page.
Speaker, same bill, STANCOM 687, no vote.
So ordered. Any remarks on 687? With no remarks, we're moving on to the next page, 688. Representative Garcia?
Reservations.
So ordered. 689. Our members will be taking a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. Representative Nakamura?
Brief recess.
Chair will call a recess. Will the House come to Will the House come to order? Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt Standing Committee Report numbers 690-24 through 738-24 as listed on pages 17 through 28, and that the accompanying House bills pass third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any discussions on SCR 690-24? 691. Next page.
Speaker, reservations on 691.
So ordered. Representative Abelati.
Same request, reservations on 691.
So ordered. All right, members, we're going to move on to 692. Representative Ward.
Speaker, no vote, and a very brief comment of a brief comment that I made before, that as nonprofits are helping community development, when we go from 6% interest to 10% interest according to this bill, that's usury in terms of what is there from a community development perspective. As I said earlier, I've worked with the World Bank and other organizations where if you really want to help communities or countries, you give them interest rates at 1 or 2%. And that is fair. This thing is a little bit out of bounds. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Alcos.
No vote.
So ordered. All right, members, we're going to move on to 693, 694, 695, next page, 696, 697, 698, 699, 700, next page, 701, Representative Peruso.
Mr. Speaker, in opposition.
Proceed.
I think that this measure is really well intentioned and it addresses a very important need, but I share the concerns of HDA on the potential impact of this bill on the department's current civil service employees.
So ordered. All right, members. Let's move on to SCR 702, 703, 704, 705, next page, 706, 707, Representative Chun.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support, I would just like to thank the representative from Pearl City for all his work on this and request for additional written comments.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Let's move on to 708, 709, next page, 710, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill with a brief comment.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I've learned over the years that we are either constitutionally or otherwise mandated not to pass any or have any legislation that favors one individual or one company. Or the opposite of that is to denigrate, malign, or otherwise destroy or hurt one company. This bill, according to the hearing that we had in Finance, hurts tremendously trade winds. They're the only ones who get hit by this. All the other guys are okay. I think the lawyers in the room and in the both minority and majority should look at this if this is getting out of bounds, because it's one company that's going to hurt and be hurt badly by this particular bill. Thank you, Speaker.
All right, members, we're going to move on to 711, 712, Representative Kong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With reservations.
So ordered. 713, Representative Garcia.
Reservations.
So ordered. Let's move on to the next page. 714, Representative Pierrick.
No vote.
So ordered. 715, 716, 717, next page. 718, 719, 720, 721, next page. 722, Representative Kong.
With reservations.
So ordered. Representative Garcia.
Same request.
So ordered. Moving on to 723, 724, 725, 726. Next page, 727, 728, 729, 730. Next page, 731. Representative Amato.
With reservations.
So ordered. Moving on to 732, 733, 734. Representative Pyrick.
In opposition.
So ordered.
While I'm in favor of kimchi, using our tax dollars to designate a day, and I say tax dollars meaning it's our salary, it's our printing, we're printing this paper out, things like that, it goes into the journal. For us to be putting effort towards a kimchi day while potholes are plentiful, while there's many other issues in our state, I think we could prioritize our efforts elsewhere, so I'll be voting no.
Representative Tam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support, you know, this is a non-fiscal bill, and it is really easy for us just to pass something that means a lot to a very large Korean community here in Hawaii. And I want to remind members that you are not just here just to fix potholes, but to also do things for the people. And if the representative from District 39 is incapable of doing more than one thing, then feel free to lean on the majority.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Your point of order?
That was infringing upon motive. Yeah, so that should not be happening on this floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was simply responding to what he was saying on the floor.
All right, members.
That was imputing motive, Mr. Speaker.
All right, any other Representative Quinlan?
In support, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think that we should be using taxpayer money to fix potholes because not everybody drives a car. Some people walk everywhere. Thank you.
All right, members. Let's move on to the next item. Representative Amato.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support, I'd like to request that the words of the representative from Waikiki be added to the journal as if they were my own, please.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Ichiyama.
Mr. Speaker, in support, permission to insert comments to the journal.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the next item, next page. 735, 736, 737, 738. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, on the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 17, STANCOM report number 690-24, HB number 1956, HD1, the following vote no. Capella, Peruso. Also on STANCOM report number 691-24, HB number 1959, HD1, the following vote no. Capella, Peruso. On page 18, STANCOM report number 694-24, HB number 1815, HD1, the following vote no. Capella, Peruso. On page 19, STANCOM report number 697-24, HB number 2144, HD1, the following vote no. Kong, Martin, Onishi, Peruso. On page 20, STANCOM report number 701-24, HB number 2758, HD2, the following vote no. Onishi, Peruso. STANCOM report number 703-24, HB number 1803, HD1, the following vote no. Capella, Peruso. On page 26, STANCOM report number 728-24, HB number 2509, HD1, the following vote no. Ganaden, Tam. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Garcia.
On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 18, SCR 692-24, HB 2369, House Draft 1, Reps. Alcos, Garcia, and Ward vote no. On page 20, SCR 701-24, HB 2758, House Draft 2, Rep. Herrick votes no. Page 22, SCR 710-24, HB 2394, House Draft 1, Reps. Garcia, Perrick, and Ward vote no. Page 23, SCR 714-24, HB 2742, House Draft 1, Perrick votes no. Page 24, SCR 718-24, HB 1913, House Draft 1, Perrick votes no. SCR 720-24, HB 1953, House Draft 1, Garcia votes no. Page 25, SCR 726-24, HB 2486, House Draft 1, Garcia votes no. Page 26, SCR 728-24, HB 2509, House Draft 1, Rep. Souza votes no. SCR 729-24, HB 2570, HD 1, Souza votes no. Page 27, SCR 731-24, HB 2071, House Draft 1, Garcia and Perrick vote no.
Have all votes been cast? Said House bills pass third reading. Third reading, item 7, Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House bills listed on page 29 pass third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any discussions on HB 1915? HB 2090, HB 1630. Representative Ward.
Speaker, I rise in opposition to 1630.
Proceed.
You may recall that in the second reading I said there's an identity crisis afoot here, which has been actually afoot for probably a decade or so, or even more. Sometimes we want to go density and think we're Hong Kong, or we want to go sprawl and think that we are Los Angeles. Mr. Speaker, this bill allows us to be even more dense than Hong Kong. I would say maybe in parts of the Philippines, outside of Manila, where it's just cheek and jowl, and some other neighborhoods. The reason being that on page 5, line 5 of this bill, it says that the county shall allow at least 2 additional dwelling units on every piece of property. Okay, you've got a house already, so at least 2, that means 3, which means at least 2 means you can do 4, maybe 5. Mr. Speaker, you know we're inviting, we fear the mainland coming in and doing Airbnb. What if the mainland comes in, buys up a piece of property and puts in 4, 5, 6 houses? One may be an Airbnb, but the other ones are rentals. Do we want to spoil our neighborhood? I mean, I know we have a housing crisis, and I told earlier in my speech, I love ADUs. Let's put one place on one family unit for rental or for family purposes. But this one is an extreme, huge, huge loophole. If we're going to allow us to be a urban blight, this is the formula for it, when you can put 4 or 5 houses on one lot. And again, some people in this state may not do it, but we're opening ourselves to mainland exploitation. And as I said earlier, the North Shore had it right when they said, keep the country country. And my community says, keep Hawaii, Hawaii Kai, and not put this gross development program into effect. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I would hope everybody looks at their neighborhood the way they have a snapshot now, and just imagine with a 3 to 4 time the density, and see if that's the same neighborhood that they represent now. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Sayama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In opposition with brief comments.
Proceed.
Thank you. I do appreciate the intent of this measure. As someone in my generation who doesn't have much hope of home ownership myself and whose family members have moved away to the mainland, I do think that Hawaii needs to change and change for more affordable housing. However, I have serious concerns with this measure, as I had previously stated on this floor. Since then, I have received significant amounts of community concerns. Community members and community neighborhood boards have passed resolutions opposing this measure as well, and I share their concerns. Reasonably, Honolulu City and County, DPP specifically, hasn't done a great job enforcing its current zoning ordinances and has allowed for bad actors to create illegal monster home developments, not only in Kaimuki and Palolo and St. Louis Heights, but also across Oahu. Mr. Speaker, I do believe that DPP has improved, however, not enough. And I don't think that not only Honolulu, but other counties may have the capacity to enforce this new state mandate. And I hope that we could continue to work on affordable housing measures during this legislative session, but I just don't think that this measure is quite ready, at least in my community. Thank you.
Representative Brusso.
In opposition.
Proceed.
I'd simply like to add the words of the previous speaker into the journal as if they were my own.
So ordered. Representative Valcos.
Mr. Speaker, in opposition.
Proceed.
In my community is now an urban community, Eva Beach. And the old Eva Beach area, we have about 3 generations of families. So the first owner, now their son living in there, now they got their kids. Parking on the streets is really filled up already. Our infrastructure is not being built. Getting out of Eva Beach, trying to get onto the freeway, is crowded already. I like that we want to help our families to stay in Hawaii, try to create living, try to create space. But I think we got to fix our infrastructure first, our sewer system, our water system, our parking. Those developments that are being built in our community already there's no street parking. How can we get more housing and more family in our area if we don't fix our infrastructure? So for that reasons, I oppose.
Representative Quinlan.
In support.
Proceed.
Due to our existing rules and regulations around wastewater disposal and septic systems, this measure will not have any effect on the district that I represent, and we will continue to keep the country.
Representative Martin.
In opposition, Speaker. My community feels very strongly about their right to weigh in on the character of their neighborhood, and they have done so with zeal for the Ko'olapoko communities, the Sustainable Communities Plan. This completely undermines that work where the community actually had a voice in deciding what their community would look like. It also undermines the work of the Honolulu City Council, where members of my community have really spoken out strongly about monster homes. This would basically make monster homes legal. And the problem that we've had in my particular community with monster homes is mostly Chinese investors, that we have birth homes and different types of businesses that are built. And it's something that they have protested. They've been heard by the City Council, who have been trying to address the problem, and this law would undermine their voice. Thank you.
Representative Kobayashi.
Mr. Speaker, in opposition.
Proceed.
I'd like to point out several things that happened with this bill. One, this bill was a fast track assigned to 3 committees jointly, then having 1 hearing. That hearing was posted, that hearing notice was posted on Friday, and the hearing itself was scheduled for Monday. There was a similar fast track on a very similar bill on the Senate side. Of course, this resulted in a lot of testimony from industry people related to development construction building supplies, real estate, but very few others. The second thing that happened with this bill was that we voted on this bill on the floor on second reading on a Monday with a proposed HD1. We did not have the real HD1 before us. We did not have that HD1 until the next week when it was finally reported from the joint three committees on Wednesday. So over a week, we had no copy of the actual HD1. That was an unfortunate situation which led to an awkward confrontation on my part. On that day that this bill was officially reported, I was asked to go to the neighborhood board, and I reported on this bill based on the proposed HD1, and later was told I was wrong. I had provided misleading information, but all because I was using the proposed HD1, which is all I had at that time, and not the real HD1, which was not posted until that day of the neighborhood board meeting. The second part of this bill I'm in opposition is that it creates density of a huge nature. It has so many unknowns, and we have to trust the people who gave us monster homes to fill in these details. These details will not be available for perhaps a year or perhaps more, depending on when the effective dates are for this bill. And thirdly, I'm concerned about this bill because of my constituents, most of whom are not going to monetize their property, most of whom who want to simply enjoy their neighborhood, their lifestyle. They do not expect to create 2 or more dwelling units on their property. They want to enjoy their current lifestyle, would not want greater density, greater traffic, greater parking problems. And I think I owe them a bit of respect in representing what they see as their definition of happiness. So for those reasons, I am opposed. Thank you.
Representative Matayoshi,
In opposition.
proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Housing Chair for putting forth this measure. I think we do need more innovative solutions. I just don't think this is the right one. Our housing market in Hawaii is a bit upside down right now. Compared to other places on the mainland, we have far more single-family house. The ratio of single-family houses to townhomes and apartments is reversed. We have way more single-family homes than apartment units, or at least our ratio is much, much higher than that on the mainland. I think that this bill seeks to expand horizontally, which I do not think is the right way to go. I think we need to be looking at, if we're looking at more density, which I agree is a place we need to go, and if we're looking at creating more units, I really think more thought needs to be given to transit-oriented development and more dense vertical housing in certain areas that can handle it. This bill seeks to create more density, but I feel it seeks to create more density in the wrong areas. It's seeking to create more density in the neighborhoods, in the suburbs, in places that are designed and people move to, quite frankly, to get away from the vertical, very dense housing. And that's vertical, very dense housing that we need, but again, it shouldn't be in certain places, in certain neighborhoods. It should be, I hope, along the rail line at rail stops so that people will need less modes of transportation and are more encouraged to use the rail. It's a whole other can of worms. But that I think is the direction we should be going, and I think this bill is just simply going in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Representative Kong,
With reservations.
so ordered. Representative Edgeland,
In support.
proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really appreciate the dialogue today and again over the last few months that we've had on this bill. I do want to address some of the comments that have been made today in that I think there may be some misunderstandings on what the bill would do. So starting with this idea that it would transform our communities. Our communities are already being transformed in a lot of ways because our residents are being pushed out, right? And the people that make up our communities, that are the heart of our communities, are no longer able to afford to live in our communities, just based on the current status quo. Yes, by allowing up to 2 ADUs on a lot, that would make some gentle differences in communities, right? An ADU in a backyard could look a little different. A duplex might look a little different. But this is a way for us to retain our residents who make our communities special. Also, on the idea that this would legalize monster homes everywhere, that's patently false. All of the regulatory tools that the counties can use to control building envelope, floor area ratios, setback requirements, lot coverage restrictions, form and design guidelines all remain totally untouched by this bill, right? HRS 46.4 enshrines those. Every single county zoning ordinance, land use ordinance around the state codifies those in a way that is totally untouched by this bill. So this idea that communities won't be able to ensure that they have a voice in making sure that they're in the future form of development, that's just not true. There are lots and lots of ways through form and design guidelines and all of those other building envelope restrictions that can ensure that we retain the character of our neighborhoods. All this does is require a minimum of 2 ADUs be allowed on all residential lots in Hawaii. So it's not 4 or 5 ADUs, it's 2 ADUs. And the reason why it says at least is because some counties are going beyond 2 ADUs. Kauai County goes beyond 2 ADUs. We didn't want to preempt them on that regard, but we wanted to set a floor of 2 ADUs. Also, on the idea that we should be going vertical, not horizontal. I largely agree, right? We should be investing more in our TOD areas. We do want more dense development in the areas where our jobs are. This would only apply to 4.5% of land in Hawaii, right? Our existing urban state land use districts. It doesn't apply to the 95% of land that's agricultural or conservation zone land. So this is a gentle increase in density of 4.5% of land in Hawaii. Because all we really have in Hawaii right now, as a previous speaker said, are single family homes, essentially, or very high density homes in urban Honolulu. Unlike essentially the rest of the country, we have nothing in between. We have very few duplexes, we have very few triplexes, right? This missing middle of housing. This would just legalize that, again, on only 4.5% of land in Hawaii, which is our urban state land use district. Also, regarding inability of the counties to enforce this, I think it's important to mention that all 4 county planning departments have testified in support of this. These are the organizations, the bodies that will be enforcing this measure. All 4 are in support. On the idea that this is driven by the manufacturing industry or the home construction industry, that's also just not true. I can mention that we received testimony and support from the Land Use Commission, from HHFDC, from the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. Again, all 4 county planning departments, AARP Hawaii, Hawaii Habitat for Hawaii, Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, Hawaii Housing Affordability Coalition, Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? A whole lot of stakeholders that are not construction industry related. And lastly, it was mentioned at the second reading that this would increase property tax values. That's also not true, right? If you build an ADU, yes, your property taxes will go up, but your neighbor's taxes won't go up. All 4 counties use a market model computer-assisted mass appraisal system, and that system does not use.
Continue, Luke. Representative Zen, continue.
That system for direct comparisons uses properties of similar structures, right? So if your neighbor builds an ADU, that house now with 2 units won't be used to calculate your own property tax assessment. So your assessed value won't go up as a neighbor. And then lastly, I want to clarify that the actual HD one was posted when we debated this on the floor for second reading. It wasn't just the proposed HD one, the actual HD one was on there. You could click a link on our computers here and get access to it, so it was posted in a timely manner. Again, I appreciate all the dialogue here. This bill does have a defective date, so it would go on for hopefully continued dialogue if it moves out today. Thank you all.
Thank you, and thank you, Representative
Speaker.
Ganadin, for yielding your time. Representative Ward?
Speaker, they're also in continued opposition.
Proceed.
There's nothing as good as a good floor debate in democracy to get the facts out. I have two questions. Did I hear a floor amendment by the good gentleman from Kauai's speech? In the bill on page 5, as I mentioned on line 5, it says, shall allow for at least 2 additional. And the good gentleman said that, hey, there's only going to be 2 ADUs. That's question number 1. Did I misread it, or did he give a floor amendment by virtue of speech? You know, the minority would love to be able to amend bills by floor speeches. Second question. There seems to have been, as he very thoroughly went down all the questions, I posed the question, what's going to stop the mainland greedy individuals who come and do Airbnb to come and become developers and put 3 and 4 and 5 houses on a lot and develop, not just for Airbnb, but for the sake of density, for the sake of condominiumizing and dividing their lots up and making them basically city blocks in its density. My trust on the mainland buying property in Hawaii is very small given what's going on in Maui, and the sales now are 30–40% of all sales now are offshore. So if we pass this bill, this is an open door. Come to Hawaii. Even the good representative from Diamond Head said, hey, let's respect our neighbors. Well, if somebody sells their house as a good neighbor, and then somebody buys it up from the mainland who wants to make this a huge development, it's kind of like mini subdivision. It's like a micro subdivision bill in a way. That if we can get 4 or 5 houses on a lot, not just 2. If it says 2, it should say 2, and the good representative should amend it in his committee, or we should as we go through the process. But right now it says 2, at least 2, which means if you got 1, you got 3 at a minimum according to the law, which means there's more. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to pose those 2 questions that have gone unanswered. Thank you.
Representative Garcia?
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative LaChica?
Mr. Speaker, in support.
Proceed.
I represent one of, tens of thousands of families that have a multi-generational family living under one roof. Like many Filipino communities across the state, it is in our values, it is our priority to be able to continue to care for our grandparents and also provide a home for possibly other family members who are just getting a fresh start. This bill would enact and enable our counties to be able to expand housing within the existing footprint. It would enable families like mine to continue to have our family members stay. It would enable our neighbors to remain on our block, on our street. I mean, how many of us have knocked on doors and have heard that their grandparents couldn't stay, their grandkids couldn't stay here. They've had to see other neighbors move, and that's what does, as the representative from Kauai has mentioned, affects the character of our neighborhoods. And overall, it does reduce the cost of living, as I see it, in the long term, with healthcare costs rising and growing costs for a rapidly aging generation. The average cost for an assisted living facility is $7,000 a month. It's something that we cannot afford, and for these reasons, I vote to support and ask our other colleagues to support as well. Mahalo.
Representative Ayu?
Mr. Speaker, ruling on a potential conflict, please.
State your conflict.
My family home may be subject to this bill.
No conflict. Ruling stands till sin die. Representative Chun?
With reservations and permission to insert written comments.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Poi Poi?
Reservations and permission for comments.
So ordered. Representative Kitagawa,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support.
proceed.
And can I please have the words of the Housing Chair adopted as if they were my own?
So ordered.
And brief comment.
Proceed.
As mentioned on second reading of this bill, I'm in support of this bill as I believe that it'll help bring families together. It'll help keep families that are moving to the mainland here and give families an option to build additional dwellings on their property. I also wanted to mention a little bit about the Ko'olaupoko Sustainable Communities Plan, as it was mentioned previously by a previous speaker. And Ko'olaupoko, for those who may not know, goes from Makapu'u all the way through my district towards Kualoa. And they did create a vision, and they have a plan that they have put together through the City Council. And one of the things that's a focus for them is to maintain the community growth boundary to protect agricultural, open space, and natural resources. The plan also mentions that residential use is approved, or therefore it says in the document that therefore housing capacity in Ko'olaupoko will be increased only by, and they list a few things, but I want to highlight two of them: subdivision of larger residential lots into smaller parcels at various locations throughout the region, which is included in this bill, expansion of existing homes to accommodate larger households, and additional housing units on existing residential lots through such programs as Ohana dwellings and accessory dwelling units. So based on the information in this Sustainable Community Plan, these are acceptable to those who contributed to the discussion relating to the Ko'olaupoko region. And I just wanted to point out that I think, as we've all kind of heard as far as support, it's really important for us to try to find ways to keep our communities together and to stop the fact that people are just leaving Hawaii and we're really losing the family structure. Grandparents, as previously said, can't, see their grandchildren anymore because they've moved to the mainland. So I am in support of this measure.
Representative Kila,
Mr. Speaker, in support.
proceed.
87-922 Farrington Highway, Waianae, Hawaii 96792. A previous home used for drug activities, bare bones $750,000. To afford a home at $750,000 with a 20% down payment, you're looking at $150,000. Mr. Speaker, residents in Hawaii have been ranked at the highest credit card debt in the nation. My district median income is $150,000, but the individual income averages about $30,000 to $40,000. Mr. Speaker, who in my district is going to afford a house at $750,000 that will still need work, still need to be repaired, and still need to be maintained? Mr. Speaker, homes like this that pop up in sale for my district allows people who need housing in my district to be displaced by the rising cost of living in Hawaii. When we talk about monster homes, Mr. Speaker, monster homes are here, and if you take a look at homes for sale in Hawaii, just based on bedrooms, they're called mansions. Properties that are well over $7 million with bedrooms of 9, 10, and 11 bedrooms for one person, for one time, not to be used ever. Mr. Speaker, I think the concern and understanding raised by previous folks on the floor is granted, but as I've said previously, I cannot keep Ma'ili if people from Ma'ili leave. I cannot keep Nanakuli if people from Nanakuli leave. Based on the last recent census, due to population growth on the west side, Farrington Highway and the corridor of the old Farrington Highway, separated by the road, due to population growth, one side is now zoned rural, while the other side is still zoned urban. If our rural communities lose the access to funding based on whether it's a USDA loan, a first-time homeowner loan based on their zoning, housing will become more and more unaffordable for these people. Mr. Speaker, and for those reasons, I rise in support.
Representative Todd,
Thank you. In support?
proceed.
I just wanted to thank the Housing Chair for his work and also for using the word triplex in a sentence so that I didn't call it one triplex. I just note that I think, without getting too far into the weeds, I think largely community development plans, which are community-driven, are a mistake and have been a mistake. The reason being that no community is going to willingly opt in to have further development in the way that the state as a whole may need. I think if you were to ask people, even in the urban core of Honolulu, if you go to Kaka'ako and ask them if they want more high-rises, and you give them the option to actually make those decisions, they're going to say no more high-rises. So unfortunately, the process we do have that plays out tends to reward communities that are more organized and more activated, which also tends to penalize communities that are less activated and less organized, which largely tend to be coming from less fortunate circumstances. Beyond that, I think there are reasonable compromises in the future. I spoke on it last time. I think it probably needs some amendments here and there, but I'm very supportive of the process and the intent. And then in addition to that, I would say that housing reform in general is very uncomfortable, but it's necessary. And there may be certain communities where this absolutely does not make sense. And I think that there's room after this crosses over to address some of those things. I stay out in Ewa Beach with my auntie, and there's virtually no parking in that community. So it's definitely an area that cannot accommodate this kind of growth. So I'm hopeful that they can find some compromises down the road. But also just in support, just in general, as someone who is fortunate enough to have a home in my community, but recognizes that many folks, particularly my age, probably don't want to live in the same home as their in-laws. You kind of got to pick one side or another, and that's not going to make everyone comfortable. But something like an ADU, which is attached to that property, may be a more comfortable situation and help to keep families together without that kind of direct conflict at the breakfast table. Thank you.
Representative Tam,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support.
proceed.
A lot of us talk about this bill primarily being for our young individuals, but it also affects many of our kupuna, especially in my district. I've heard way too many stories of our kupuna, my kupuna in my district, that are transitioning from a one-bedroom to a studio condominium because they simply cannot afford, because they're living on a fixed income on Social Security right now. A one-bedroom, 560 square foot condominium in my district with no view costs around $522,000. If you calculate the mortgage payments as well as the maintenance fees, that could come out to about $2,400 right there a month. I don't know anyone that can afford something like that and want to live in something so small. And for those reasons, I am really thankful that the Housing Chair has proposed something so innovative that is meant to address our housing crisis. Because I do believe that for us to fix our housing crisis, we need to do something big and bold, and this bill does that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Right, members? With no further comments, let's move on to the vote. Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On STANCOM report number 625-24, HB number 1630, House Draft 1, the following vote no. Reps Garrett, Hussey Burdick, Kobayashi, Martin, Matayoshi, Nishimoto, Peruso, Sayama, and Takenuchi. Thank you.
Representative Garcia.
On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On SCR 625-24, HB 1630, House Draft 1, Reps Alcos and Ward vote no.
Have all votes been cast? Said House bills pass third reading. Item 8. Mr. Clerk, are there any resolutions for action?
Mr. Speaker, there are no resolutions for action. May all others be referred to print.
So ordered. Item 9. Members, are there any announcements? Representative Chun.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you have some time this afternoon, there is a group of folks working on long-term care issues, and there'll be a discussion on how we can move forward with our long-term care system that's happening in the auditorium until 3 p.m. So if you're available, please feel free to join us. Thank you.
Representative Kahaloa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is Cattlemen's Day at the Capitol, and unfortunately, as some of you may have known, there was a calf visiting in the rotunda, but that time has passed, and little Timmy, being a calf, had to go home. So my apologies. If you really wanted to see the calf, Please let leadership know that we should do this again next year at Cattlemen's Day, and let Senator Richards know he should send his baby calf all the way from the Big Island here again. So my apologies, but the cattlemen are still here. There's info briefings, and they're visiting some of your offices today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, members, with no further announcements, Representative Morikawa to adjourn.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stand adjourned until 12 o'clock noon tomorrow.
Representative Garcia.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. The House stands adjourned until 12 noon tomorrow.